Students, this is Mr. S here. I've got a special guest video. This is going to be Detective Carrie McNally with the Seattle Police Department Recruiting Division, and we are going to be doing a brief interview of her just to get her perspective on the law enforcement career field and her career with the Seattle Police Department. Carrie, thank you for your time today.
No, thank you for inviting me to participate in this program.
Absolutely. One of the things I wanted to start off with is, can you briefly describe your unique career paths that were offered by your agency for sworn personnel? What sort of different career paths are available with the Seattle Police Department?
Well, we are the largest agency in Washington State. We have 1,300 sworn members. Currently, we're looking to increase our staffing up to 1,500 by 2019, which is part of what our recruiting efforts are surrounding right now. And in Seattle Police Department, we have more than 40 specialty units. And so with our agency, half of our department works in patrol, which is 911 response out of 5 different precincts. And then we also have 40 additional units. We have a full-time SWAT team. We have crime analysts. We have investigations unit for every kind of investigation possible. We also have officers that work on task forces with the FBI and the DEA and the ATF. And so we offer every possible opportunity to find a specialty in our department, much more so than we see a lot of other agencies that have a smaller footprint, less opportunity. We have 43 square miles of waterway. That's very unique to our area. And so we get a lot of chances to work in units that are not traditionally offered by law enforcement agencies.
Okay. What about support personnel? Not every criminal justice student who has an interest in law enforcement may want to actually go into sworn, badge-carrying, gun-toting positions. What sort of non-sworn support personnel positions are available through the Seattle Police Department?
So our agency strength overall is 1,800 people. So we have 600 support personnel that support all of the efforts of the police department. We have a parking enforcement unit. We've got latent print examiners. We've got forensic investigators. We have a video unit. We got a photography unit. We've got an evidence unit. Everything that helps run the agency, 24/7. We have dedicated personnel that do that, records administration. We have a wide variety of opportunities throughout not only each of our precincts, but in our headquarters and our ancillary units too.
Okay. And you'd mentioned forensic investigators and CSI is always a popular topic in criminal justice. What sort of duties do they do in tandem with the investigators within the department? The sworn investigators.
The latent print investigators are usually the ones that go hand in hand with us, and so they develop all of our print cards and additional tools that we have out in the field. So we send those in for APHIS and to identify suspects off of latent print cards that come out of a crime scene, as well as fingerprinting the subjects that we bring in for identification. We also work hand in hand with our Washington State Crime Lab. So in our state, the Washington State Patrol has the jurisdiction for our crime lab. So every agency feeds into that particular organization to do all of the developing of, or processing of marijuana, narcotics, some of our homicide investigations, and they actually come out to the scene with us for some of the larger scenes. For Seattle Police Department, I have an entire crime scene investigations unit that are detectives. And many of them have spent time in other investigations units and kind of honed their skill, and now their full-time job is crime scene investigation. And so they're detectives that process the scenes.
Okay. Can you briefly describe opportunities your agency offers for females who are interested in a career in law enforcement?
Well, I'm very proud to say that's one of the efforts I've been on for 26 years with the Seattle Police Department. And the last year, one of the efforts that I've been trying to build is bringing more women into this field. With half the population, of course, being female, and most agencies are 9 to 10% of their department boast of female, sworn members. We have 14% of our department are women, and my chief, my deputy chief, and assistant chief are women in my department. And so we certainly don't see any limit here. We are doing everything we can to connect with younger women. We've created a law enforcement network for women for leadership. We just recently put on training for about 160 female officers from across Washington and Oregon. And it's about coming together and then reaching out and connecting with younger women who can see themselves potentially in this path in the future too. So we do a lot of work in this area around developing future women leaders. And we have certainly, the top 3 positions in my department are held by women. So we have great success with female officers in my agency.
Awesome. For college students who may be interested in ultimately pursuing a career in investigations, what type of career path is typical within your agency for someone who's wanting to pursue an investigative assignment?
Well, everybody's going to do 3 to 5 years in patrol. So the way that our process works is we hire our officers and then we pay them to go to the academy. So our officers get 4.5 months of basic academy training, another 7 weeks of specialized Seattle training, and then field training. And once they get their assignment, typically you'll work 3 to 5 years in patrol answering 911 calls and prove yourself and differentiate yourself as a good investigator, a good communicator, someone who is willing to do more than the minimum in their job, and then they can get into the opportunities in some of the specialty units. I spent my first 10 years in patrol, but I also did undercover work throughout my 10 years in patrol and served search warrants as well. But then I went to the missing persons unit, background investigations, policy and development, taught at the academy. So the thing that's great about our agency, and I really believe this, is once you prove that you are someone who is willing, again, to do more than the minimum, and you say yes more than no, you're willing to accept, or never say that's not my job. These opportunities will seek you out as well, or you may find a path that you really like. And once you get into investigations, it's very common to move to different units. Many people want to be they call me and say, I want to be a homicide investigator. Well, that one's going to take a little while. I mean, that's going to be a lot of follow-up units. That's going to be proving yourself as an outstanding investigator, interrogator, interviewer, and processing crime scenes. So those are kind of the steps you're going to move. Burglary theft is easier to get to certainly than the homicide unit, but those take some time, and we have those opportunities that are there. It's just you need to prove yourself.
And I'm so glad you touched on that, because I can't tell you the number of criminal justice students I've had in classes that want to ultimately become a homicide investigator. And it's good information to realize, and perspective to realize, that there's some reputation that has to be built to get to that point.
Absolutely. And again, if you don't have a way, we get the most amount of information from, frankly, being kind to the people that we're arresting. And that elicits more information than certainly, being hard-nosed about everything. We have to build relationships, and those relationships are not just with our community. They have to be with the suspects that we probably have arrested multiple times. And so if they don't trust us, they're not going to give us information that ultimately leads to a conviction, which is how you become a good investigator. It's the follow-up work that goes along with it. And it's not easy. These cases can take months, if not years, to do the hard work and to get to that conviction rate. And so, you got to put your time in, and report writing, rapport, communication, all of those things lead you to being a better investigator.
Exactly. So, whereas many police applicants today apply with multiple agencies prior to being hired into a sworn law enforcement position, what unique benefits and opportunities does the Seattle Police Department afford that would make your department worthwhile considering?
Well, first of all, we, like many agencies across the country, are hiring at a faster rate than I've ever seen any law enforcement opportunities across this country. Often, I think it comes from what we're suffering too is we had a big hiring push in the late 80s, early 90s, and now for us, 30% of our department is eligible to retire, which is really common for law enforcement agencies across the country. More and more, I go to recruiting events, and there's 40 and 50 agencies that are all hiring, and we're all looking for the same candidates. I would say that certainly the advantage to Seattle is we boast the highest pay in our state. When you graduate from the academy, it's $70,000 is your base pay to start, and it goes up very quickly from there. And I think that that's a huge benefit. We don't require residency in Seattle, and I know a lot of people are limited by it's very expensive to live in Seattle, but we don't require you to live in our city limits. So we have a beautiful area. It's a very safe area. We know that there are agencies across this country that are making minimum wage, and they're in a much more dangerous position than we are, certainly. We have a very low crime rate. We've got a great, robust agency, top-notch training, the best equipment. We are hiring 100 officers a year for the next 5 years. And so the opportunity is really, candidates that are interested. We also have 2 full-time recruiters, and that's a big difference too, is we're here to answer questions. We offer free study guides and workshops, and we give our candidates as much of an advantage as possible, so they don't have to test with multiple agencies.
Yeah, exactly. What about we keep hearing about stories in the news about terrorism, and it's constantly on the forefront of the mind of the general public. What efforts does your agency perform to help counter terrorism activity in your jurisdiction?
Well, we have a great relationship, certainly, with the BRIC, with different intelligence sources across the country. We have a real-time crime center that we stood up in October of 2015. So we have analysts that are there reviewing crime instantaneously and pushing that out to our personnel, which is really unique. Policing has certainly changed in 26 years, and we actually have analysts that are sitting there in real time looking at video, seeing what's happening, and deploying our personnel in real time to the affected areas. We also have a great relationship with the federal agencies in our area. We certainly, with the waterways, have a great relationship with the Coast Guard and the other military organizations. And we all feed into what's called a fusion center. So everybody, we have representatives from our department that sit side by side with other agencies in the area and the military and emergency operations center personnel, and we can deploy our personnel based on threats that are coming in, investigate those, a very robust intelligence unit as well. So everything goes hand in hand. We certainly are not in this by ourselves, and the relationships that we have really help us to, what I believe, keep on top of real threats that may be coming in. We are a big city. We are very vigilant. And, we've been doing, planning for events for a very long time. It doesn't mean we get lazy. So we're always on top of it and deploying kind of the best tactics possible for large events.
And does the Seattle Police Department have membership within the Joint Terrorism Task Force in your area?
We do, absolutely. And those, again, that's part of that relationship. In fact, we have members of the FBI that also sit in the Real-Time Crime Center with us, too. And so, again, we have those relationships. And whenever we have a large event, we certainly have presidential visits. We have, everything that happens in every big city that come, and we sit our people in those operation centers. We have a police operation center, and then we have an emergency operation center, too, that we stand up. And so we're able to handle things at a more statewide level, and then also deploy our resources in addition to the federal partners, all sitting in the same room, looking at the same video and seeing what's happening. And, it's a big difference when someone's sitting right next to you as opposed to having to call them on the phone or get a hold of them on the radio.
Absolutely, especially when they're trying to figure out who you are, if you already got that relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Does your agency offer internship opportunities to college students? And I see your head nodding, so that would be yes. How would your agency view a completed internship, either with your agency or another law enforcement agency, if you saw that on the application for a police applicant?
I think that everything that gives you an advantage over other candidates is a good idea. I'll speak to the internships. Seattle is like top 18 in the country for offering internships. This summer we boasted 200 internships with the city of Seattle.
Wow.
And over the summer we had 30 youth interns that came in. So we choose students that don't even necessarily want to be police officers, but it's a great opportunity for us to build relationships and connect with our community that probably would have never had a conversation with a cop. And so, again, for this summer, we had youth interns, 30 of those, and we deployed them through all of our precincts. They've been with us all summer long. And then every quarter, we offer internships to students in the areas and the fields that they're studying. So as long as they're enrolled in school, every quarter we bring them in, not only to the police department, but the city of Seattle. That certainly gives them an inside look and an inside ability to, especially when the testing comes up, to be able to know more about the agency and understand what our goals are as a department, especially as it relates to our community. And so I think that, that's something that we want to hear from candidates that are coming in is you've done your research, you know something about the organization where you want to work, and what you've done to prepare. Those are certainly critical elements to any testing process, whether it's with us or anybody else. Is, you need to do your research and find out more. And that internship shows that level of commitment and interest in really finding out the kind of organization you want to spend your next 20 or 30 years at, certainly as a career.
Absolutely. What about so in addition to internships, if you've got a criminal justice student who doesn't have prior military experience or prior law enforcement experience, what sort of extracurricular activities might you recommend for someone who's in college or about to be an upcoming college graduate to help them stand out from other applicants with similar degree credentials?
I would say that one of the things that's so critical, especially in this time in law enforcement, is our relationship with the community and understanding, more about people that may not look like you or may not have grown up like you. And I think that for us, for example, in our city, we have 170 different languages that are spoken in the city of Seattle, in our school district. And so there is a huge responsibility for us to understand more cultures, understand the backgrounds of the people that we're policing or that we're helping when we're responding to 911 calls. I would say the same thing to my own daughter. My daughter is learning additional languages, and she's volunteered in different communities and come with me to programs that help broaden her view of the world. And I think that you need to understand, especially as you're coming into law enforcement, that it's so much bigger than the old days of, I want to drive fast and, carry a weapon. It's about building bridges in our community, because a lot of people don't trust us and they don't like us. And so we have to continue to bring people on that understand their place in law enforcement. And that is making sure that we have a community that trusts us and that believes that we are there for their best interest. And so I would say at this point, really what we look for are well-rounded candidates with a variety of backgrounds, a variety of interests, and really are dedicated to making a difference in the community that they're going to serve. And so, I would say dealing with, volunteering in your community would be something that I certainly would look at as a backgrounder, as someone who's going over and above to really learn more about where they want to work.
Great advice. I mean, particularly for large metropolitan areas where you've got multiple diverse cultural background in the community, and having someone that hasn't spent their entire life maybe in the middle income area of town and never been to a Section 8 housing before, that would be a culture. It was for me when I was a rookie. So that would definitely, I think, to your point, help someone stand out. As a police recruiter, what in your personal experience would convince you to pursue this type of career field if you could go back in time to when you were first getting into the field?
Well, I would say, I knew when I was 6 I was going to do this job. So for me, this was always my path. I went to the University of Washington up until I could test. And I tested when I was literally 21 years old. And, I thought, I'm never going to get hired the first time. So this is a good time to start. I'll finish my degree and join the department later. But the opportunity came to me at the time that it did. And so, I'm probably atypical than a lot of other candidates. I think that what we see as recruiters are people who maybe have spent their path doing something else. Maybe it wasn't even on their thought process. They had a path. They were going to go to school. This is the way they were going to, the path they were going to take. And instead, they're realizing that maybe what they're looking at isn't going to give them the satisfaction that they wanted. It's not helping other people. It's not making a difference in your community. And I think that I would have probably gotten involved in more programs when I was earlier in my career, especially with connecting with my community, because I see how valuable that is right now. I relish the idea of being able to go into a school and meet with a young girl, especially who was like me, that, wow, I just thought police officer for the very first time, and I could totally do that. That could be me. That could be my path. And I think that, my passion wouldn't have changed, even if I'm looking at this now. But I do know that this is a difficult time in this country, and a lot of people are dissuaded by joining law enforcement because of a perceived divisiveness, a perceived difference between law enforcement and the rest of their community. And I think that it takes someone who understands that they want to make it better. And I think that that's the message that I would have now is, if you think there's a problem or you believe there is, then you need to step up and join us and help us get better and help us grow and learn more and do better. Because if it's somewhere inside of you, you're saying, wow, there's lots of problems in law enforcement, then come join us and help us be better. It's not enough to sit on the sidelines and throw stones and say, wow, that's really messed up, someone else has got to deal with this. We want people who are the ones that want to step up and be that change and be the ones that continue to make us better and make us grow. And I think that that's a challenge for a lot of people. I also know there's a lot of families out there that are probably very afraid for their loved one. I just did an interview recently, and I said, there's 1 million police officers in the United States right now, and all their families are saying, please don't go to work. Please don't do this. It's scary. And those officers all say, just like I told my family, is this is what I'm called to do. I have got to make a difference, because if I don't, who's going to? And who's going to keep people safe and protect them if it's not for me, or if it's not me? And I think that that's a challenge now. Not everybody loves the police, and we get that. We get a lot of families don't always support that. But if that's what your heart is and that's what your passion is, there are opportunities, whether it's with us or any other agency, to make the difference and have a job that's, not sitting behind a desk, that's not, it's every day's different. It's exciting, it's fun, and it really makes a difference.
Absolutely. As the saying goes, all that's needed for evil to prevail is for good men and women to do nothing.
Absolutely. And we all have jobs. We have great career paths. We got great opportunities. And so, this is still an excellent career, and I would recommend it to my own children. And I do. My daughter is just getting old enough. I'm like, listen, I would absolutely still recommend this. Even after 26 years, I still think this is a noble path and a great career.
That's a good lead-in for my final question. For an upcoming graduate seeking a law enforcement career, what can be done to best prepare that individual for the police academy and follow-on field training that they would undergo after being hired?
I think that the challenge, there are two new issues that we're seeing that ironically I'd never seen before. One is driving, and I know this is really odd, but a lot of younger candidates have never had a driver's license or never driven a car. And so we're seeing failures in things like driving and EVOC, that I would have never imagined in the past. And so it sounds so basic, but, being able to drive, being able to navigate, understanding, understanding the culture and the community and your role in it. We try to weed out people who have bias or prejudice, and it's being open-minded, not only to new ideas, but you need to be teachable. And I think a lot of people come into this in a variety of times in their lives, and they think they have this all figured out. You have to sit back and be humble, and you have to accept that you don't have all the answers. And we have great training, and maybe it isn't applied, all the time. But you take pieces of it. You find mentors. You find people that you really respect, and you think, wow, they're great police officers. That's the kind of cop I want to be. And you follow them, and you listen to their advice, and you understand that the community is watching you all the time. Everybody's watching you all the time, and so it's doing the right things for the right reasons, and understanding that that's the kind of career path you're going into.
Okay. And I said that was my last question, but I guess I lied. I thought of one more. So with this video primarily being for students that are in an online class, many of which may be in a number of places throughout the United States, does the Seattle Police Department typically have police applicants that are from out of state? And if so, are there any accommodations that they typically make available for those out-of-state applicants?
Yeah, so we do have an out-of-state process. It does require you to come to Seattle, and we've gotten it down to 3 total visits, and it's over typically a 6-month period of time. So we would have the candidate come up, and they would take the video and written test on Saturday, and on Sunday you would take the physical agility test, and then you'd go home. And we would bring you out of the next available opportunity to continue the next process, which would be a background interview and a polygraph examination. And then the very last trip is on a conditional job offer. So we make it as painless as possible. You do need to come up to Seattle, and we do ask you to test there. But we offer online study materials, videos on how to do well on the physical agility test. And again, with 2 recruiters, we answer questions all the time. And we get a couple hundred candidates from across the country. Our economy is just so good. I mean, when you're looking at, again, starting wage is $70,000 for a police officer, there's a great reason to come to Seattle or some of my fellow law enforcement officers in Washington. We all get paid very well. We have phenomenal law enforcement up here in our state. We certainly think we have, one of the best agencies at Seattle PD, but I can't say enough good things about law enforcement in general in Washington. It is very well paid. It's a great career path, and there are tons of opportunities up here.
Awesome. Detective McNally with the Seattle Police Department. Carrie, thank you so much.